This is part 1 of a 3-part podcast.
Put Paul's brain on your plot. Do you have a hunk of land but don't know where to start? Do you have a world-changing permaculture idea and you need some feedback? Do you feel like the guy in overalls may inexplicably hold the keys to all your wildest permaculture and homesteading dreams? Well, you're probably wrong. But if you want to give it a go anyway, you can hire Paul for a consultation. He will be all yours for a whole entire hour. Schedule your Paulversation today at permies.com/consult. permies.com/consult.
It's going. And we're live.
We're live.
Shit.
Okay, nice. So I hope you guys will kind of carry this today, because I got to be up a lot last night visiting with a mouse who came into my house, and the mouse discovered a motion detector nightlight that I have and set it off about 40 times before, you know, the big snap sound. Nice. And the mouse found a little bit of peanut butter I left out for him. And it's like, I think I'll help myself. And and then the motion detector didn't go off anymore. So I'm feeling a little rummy, but I'm going to do this anyway. But it seems like it's one of those times where this has come up like 5 times in a few days. And so I felt like it was time to write something about it. So I wrote something about Permies, and now we're going to all gather and hopefully sing the same song. But I don't know, maybe some people will want to sing a slightly different tune. But I kind of feel like if I try to talk about something, then I want to use the phrase shouted down. Generally regarded as an idiot. And I kind of feel like people are so married to these ideas of what's the best thing you can do from home for the environment. And and I want to start off by saying years ago, I think it was like 6 or 7 years ago, it was shortly after the Better World book had come out, which was in 2019. So yeah, 6 or 7 years ago, I was at the doctor's and they needed to take some of my blood to do a test. And I was like, oh, okay. And so the guy who's taking my blood, he says, "What do you do?" And I said, I suppose I'm now an author. And I told him the title of the book. Oh, that sounds there. I said, "What do you think is the best thing that you can do for the environment?" And he said it was about writing letters to politicians or evil corporations. And then he kind of expanded on it to be like, there is nothing else you can do that is as powerful as that. And I never got a chance to reply. He had a lot to say, and then next thing you know, I'm done and I'm heading out the door. But of course my brain kept going, and I kind of felt like, I think that's a rigged playing field, and it doesn't really. I mean, I'm glad that people are doing that. But he was very emphatic that there is nothing else you can do. That's the only thing. And I do feel like that is shouted at me a lot, and I'm called names for suggesting anything to the contrary. And for all of these things, I feel like I'm called names for suggesting anything to the contrary. And so, but hey, let's dive in and see. Now, Andreas put together these lovely slides. Look at that. But then I'm sick of being the light bulb guy, and but that is still going on. So and it is so bizarre to me that when the conversation comes up about what can you do from home to make things better for all of us, to make things less yucky, the top of the list still to this day is the stuff about the light bulbs. And it is, there is some truth to it, but generally, if you live in a cold climate, I would say generally it is actually the opposite. And so, and I've written about it in my book. I've talked about it. I've written about it on Permies. I have a whole article I've shared. It seems bizarre that this is, but the bottom line is that for that particular instance, and it's so trivial, but for that particular instance, millions of dollars were spent to say that because somebody was profiting. And it's like, so me, I have no profit in saying anything to the contrary. And so, so therefore it doesn't have any weight, maybe. It doesn't go anywhere. I haven't campaigned. I haven't lobbied for it. And so, I don't know. It just seems like it's some simple math that seems so clear, and I don't want to really talk about that one today. I want to get into some of these other ones because I kind of feel like the whole light bulb thing, I've beaten it to death, and I'm so tired of being the light bulb guy. And let's see, I've got the ability to go click on the next thing. Okay, so I think let's go ahead and get started on the list that I've already put together of the things that I feel like are wobbly as solutions of things you can do at home, and why I think that, and then yet some people are so adamant. Okay, light bulbs. First, let me do this. Does anybody feel like there's anything more to be said about light bulbs? I mean, I know I am overly weary of talking about light bulbs. Okay, that sounds like a lot of silence.
I think that it's funny that we still have to order them. At least I do. We can't just buy them in the store.
I think that if you buy them for your oven, there's oven light bulbs.
Okay.
40 watts. But no, I get them online. But I stocked up so much about 5 years ago that I haven't needed to get any more lately.
Yeah, that is a nice thing to get a big box and you never worry about it.
Yeah.
I think that the math is so incredibly simple. It's true that I think the number is 97%, but it's going to wiggle a little bit around 97% depending on a bunch of things. But 97% of the energy use for an incandescent light bulb is going to give off heat. But the amazing thing is that it's going to give off an extremely efficient form of heat. Mm-hmm. And by having a little bit of knowledge about how to harvest that when you're cold, because it turns out to be, at least here in Montana, and Derek, you're up in Canada, so it's even more so. But when you have winter time, it's dark and cold. And so it's like, that very efficient form of heat is kind of nice. And so basically, I've made videos. I brought it up during my TED Talk. So much more. And it's basically like, okay, if you were to switch all your incandescent lights over to LED, the light that they bring is 10 times more efficient, they say. I think depending on some factors, it might be only 6 times more efficient. But sure, let's just give them the 10. But less heat, less of that efficient form of heat anyway. And at the same time, if we were to do that and switch out, then there would be a certain amount of savings. And of course, depending on how you light your home, that savings is going to be probably pretty trivial. Like if you're going to save anything substantial, I want to question how you're illuminating your home. like, wow, how many light bulbs are you running at once? Are you illuminating rooms that you're not in? Is that why you're saving so much money by doing it that way? But I think that through wise use of light bulbs, then in the wintertime, it's going to provide heat, a much more efficient form of heat than almost any other kind of heat that you might have. And of course, we could start talking about heat pumps and things like that, but that's another conversation for another day. The thing is that I think I've done the math to prove that when you use light bulbs like this, and it's over your head and it heats you, then if you've got your house thermostat set to 72, then with this, you'll be too warm. And then you end up, what I'm suggesting is turn down the thermostat on the house. And then I did some demonstrations of being able to use a variety of micro heaters like this. And here I've got something right at my hands. And there's also something down here under my feet that if you do enough of that, you could turn the thermostat down to 50 or even lower in your home and still be very comfortable. And it turns out now you've eliminated 90% of your heating bill, and which is far more money. Like now you've saved like $1,000 in electricity and energy, whereas you're trying to use LED bulbs instead is going to reduce your energy usage by what? $20 a year, $10 a year, something like that. And if you're saving $100 a year because of the way you change your light bulbs, I think you're illuminating rooms that you're not in, or maybe you're illuminating the great outdoors or something like that. I'm not sure. So that's the light bulb thing. I think we're done with it. Anybody got any frosting they want to add to light bulbs?
Well, I've become my father. I walk around everyone else in the household turning off lights behind them.
I do that too. I don't know, but other times I kind of feel like I don't mind if the light's on. Like in the middle of winter, I think that there's something nice if there's like a whole lot of extra light. You know, if there's and it's like, okay, yeah, I'd add some small trivial amount of very efficient heat, but even more, it's just nicer, you know. So I don't mind so much in the winter, but in the summertime, yeah, let's we don't need all these extra lights on at the same time. There's plenty of light coming in through the windows.
The frosting I'd like to add. Oh, if you could go back one slide. The frosting I'd like to add, Samantha, I'd like to echo your experience and what you mentioned, Paul. My experience is similar, where appliance lights, what are called appliance lights, are my reliable way to obtain incandescent bulbs, just because inside an oven or any of those hot places, it has to be an incandescent bulb. I have been occasionally able to find incandescent bulbs not through special order, just, on the shelf, so to speak. And then, Paul, I'll just add, you've said it before, but I think it bears repeating. I am one of the people, and I've met others, and I know you're one, where I prefer the quality of light that comes from an incandescent bulb far over a CFL and over an LED.
Of course, yeah.
For me, CFLs are something I don't even want to talk about anymore, kind of like you, Paul. They're so bad. I find them so discomforting. And then for incandescent versus LED, I do prefer what I believe I am perceiving as what I know to be the broader spectrum light that is emitted by the light or by the luminary over the steps computed light output of an LED.
It's much nicer.
Yeah, I think so. And then also at a cognitive level, I'm more okay with there being that tiny bit of lead in an incandescent bulb that gets hot versus all the circuitry and everything else in an LED getting hot and cooking when it's producing that heat. Yeah.
I am curious now. There's something called a vintage LED. Mm-hmm. And it's like when I try to get the numbers on the vintage LED. I struggle to be able to find the information I'm looking for, but I kind of feel like the quality of light is probably substantially better than a warm light LED, which is better than a cool light LED. And I'm sure we've all been to somebody's home where they light their home with LED, and I don't know about everybody else, but I feel like, if I just walked into some kind of prison or something, it feels unhealthy and unwelcoming. It feels wrong. But incandescent is the standard. And I kind of wonder if the newer vintage LED what they're calling vintage LED is the quality of light in that coming close to incandescent. And I doubt it, but I'm curious. I'd be interested to find out.
Having one myself. Sorry. Go ahead, Paul.
I just kind of feel like we keep getting all this information of like, they're better. And it's like, it turns out what they meant was better than what we used to put out.
Yeah, better than crap. Right.
Yeah. We had a really low bar of total shit, and it's like slightly less shitty, but not nearly as good as incandescent.
Yep.
And it's like, so I'm kind of weary of like doing the investigation yet again. But it does look like it's going to put out a yellower, oranger light. And, so maybe it is, maybe they're going to finally close in on it. But I still think that the incandescent is the champion in the winter time. So
my experience with a vintage LED, I want to see if I can have one near at hand. I don't think I do. I don't think this is one. No. My experience with the vintage LED is that it was a little better than the crap that came before of other LEDs. It did have more emitters in a longer pattern. And so instead of a hyper pinprick focus light emitting diode, right? That's the LE. It was a broader physical emission of light. And so in that way, experientially, it was a little better. Here it is. I have it. And the light was tuned a little more yellow, but I still found it to be, I had to buy one in a pinch, at the time, and, it's still running, so no sense in throwing it away now. Here it is. You can see probably a little spiral of all the little light emitting diodes, right? And they're all dosed to be a little yellow, right? And so sure, the light coming off it is more warm and golden, but in my opinion, it's still the artificial graduated step of light emission instead of an actual curve of a burning thing. Yeah. Which, we spent however many tens of thousands of years looking at. And I think it's some low brain, some hindbrain part of us prefers. And I certainly feel connected to that part of my brain that prefers the light of a thing that's burning more than the light of a computer chip.
The LEDs still have a bit of a flicker to them. And
I do occasionally perceive it.
Yeah. And it does. I mean, overall, the health thing is a big one. Like, do you feel as healthy around it? And it's like, how are we going to measure that? If you use incandescents, during winter, do you swap them out in summer? I don't. I just tend to turn off my lights. Hey, check this out. Look at how bright this light is right now. This is called fog. And the light that I'm savoring right now comes out of a window. Mm-hmm. But and then of course last night in the middle of the night, a mouse was testing my incandescent light that was the with a motion control thing on it. Like, damn you, mouse. But okay. So I don't swap them out. I just don't have lights on nearly as much in the summer. And then in the winter time, I don't know, cozy. I'm going to be in here working. I mean, I've got a rocket mass heater just a few feet away, and it's going to keep me quite warm. But then every once in a while, if I'm lazy, here's a light switch right here I can turn on, and it makes me quite warm in here, even though it might not be as warm in my office. Do you guys swap out lights?
No,
Fuck no.
I just use the regular light, the incandescent bulbs, and I don't like the LED.
Yeah, I don't either.
The farther north you go, the more dramatic the summer-winter difference is as well. So someone in say, Georgia or Texas may feel a greater need for lights in the summer. But, here I think it's still after 9 p.m. locally when it's sunset. And I'm usually ready for bed by then, or had enough, so.
As for me, I'm also enjoying window light and much prefer that in my dwellings whenever I can manage it. And I don't bother to switch out the lights. Where I live, there's no winter to speak of, basically. And so it's hot all the time. Or I certainly feel hot all the time in my own kind of body physiology. Still running the incandescent lights sparingly, right? Just like you said, Derek. I am my dad. And I've done other things to try to make the other folks who are less light switch conscious, a little more light switch conscious without me having to do that manually.
Okay, so just to reiterate something, the 30,000 feet view is stuff when we try to talk about how to have a better environmental footprint, things that we can do at home. I think that what I want to do is do myth busting, I guess, and say it ain't the light bulbs. They keep saying it's the LED, and it's like nope. That if it helps at all, it's so trivial, it's not worth even talking about.
It's silly how much they talk about it because it really doesn't. I mean, there's so many other things to do.
And the general strategy seems to be that it's like, okay, in order to persuade you, what I'll do is I will say it in a much louder voice.
Louder.
Yeah, that seems to be the number one way to drive the point home. So this next one is a little challenging. I think this gets into a really weird space, but it's like, okay, what's the best thing you can do for the environment from home? And I get this one a lot. And it's like, really it gets into this whole space of the last one, the light bulb thing, and the native plant one. The opinion that you're supposed to have, I think, has been paid for by bad guys. And there's somebody profiting on the other side. And so with the light bulb guys, they get far more profit from the LED than they do from the incandescent. And so they're very upset that people keep trying to use the incandescent. So they lobbied against themselves to have people buy LEDs. And now they're harvesting subsidies for LEDs, blah, blah, blah. All right. So there's profit. So basically the profit says switch to LED. And I, who have no profit in this game, say, please don't do that. Incandescent is far superior. Then the next thing that happens with the incandescent versus LED, it turns out that there are political parties assigned to each position. And if I stand up and say math, they point at me and say, you are part of the evil political party. And when I say I'm not part of any of the political stuff, and they're like, no, the thing that you mentioned, those light bulbs, proves that you're part of the evil political party. For fuck's sake. All right.
Hi, this is Mark. There are a lot of reasons to get angry these days, but I prefer to focus on the positive things that we each can do to make this world a better place. The book Building a Better World in Your Backyard, Instead of Being Angry at Bad Guys, is a great resource for just that. Instead of throwing my arms up in frustration at governments or big corporations, there's a list of ideas that we each can tackle to affect change. Information about this book and other resources can be found at Permies.com.
Native plants. I'm going to guess all three of you know exactly who pays to have this message written into brains.
Yeah, this is really interesting. I'm thankful that you're bringing this up.
Yep. Because of my job, I happened to see the court ruling around Roundup recently.
There you go. There, you said it. You said it.
Yeah.
And I've gotten to. I saw a thing on YouTube once which I thought was brilliant, and it was they called it the whole native plant thing is a form of bigotry, and not only is it bigotry, but it's officially Nazi bigotry. And it has to do with the fact that, you mentioned Monsanto, which has been bought by Bayer, and Bayer was part of the whole Auschwitz thing.
Yep.
And it's like, you would think that company would go out of business and those people would start up a whole new name or something. But no, they're standing behind it. Bayer, we're all about that whole Auschwitz thing. That was terrific.
Oh, yeah. Bayer, BMW, all those companies.
And so it's like, whoa. Now, and I know that I wrote a very long essay on it, and I mentioned this in my book, but it's kind of like, it is wild how if you try to talk about what can you do at home to improve the environment, that not only is this brought up, but it's one of those things where they can prove it by saying it louder. And I kind of feel like I can't, it's a challenging space to talk about because, of course, we all love native plants. And I would imagine that out of the four of us here, I eat more native plants than the rest of you combined. Just a guess. I could be wrong. Look at Derek. He's making a face. Like, man,
I will not challenge that statement.
What do you got, Derek? What are you eating that's a native?
Well, we do have some sunchoke. We have lots of the native berries, Saskatoons, and some little bit of viburnum and choke cherries and pin cherries, and
probably some stinging nettle.
We haven't bought into that too much. I do like it for a tea, but don't really eat it too much, and some of the others in the household, don't like to have it around in the landscape if they can. They're not necessarily avoiding it.
Don't walk through there. You'll regret it. Okay, fair. Okay, so I'm gonna step down from the statement that I made. So it sounds like you're probably eating out of the native stuff as much as I am, maybe even more. And so it's like, okay, so when I back off from that, the key is that the enthusiasm for native plants is actually lipstick on a pig. It is bigotry against non-native plants. It's not that they're pro-native as much as they're like, kill non-natives. And it sounds like a familiar message from Auschwitz, I think. We've decided that we've made a list of who we don't like, and let's go kill them. And it's like, boy, there sure are a lot of them. Ugh, this looks like a lot of work. What would make this easier? Now that we've got the decision, like, for the good of the environment, we're going to go kill plants. We need something to help us here because, boy, that's a lot of work. So it turns out most of these native plant advocate organizations buy a lot of herbicide. And so it's like, okay, how did they ever get there? That doesn't seem like death seems like a completely different message than, boy, native plants sure are great. And then if they're like, we're all about native plants, or, the best thing you could possibly do for the environment is to plant more native plants, then I don't know. I feel like, if you say anything contrary, you kind of feel like the villain in this scenario. And it's like, so I want to make it clear, I'm not against native plants. I'm for, growing food. And it's like native and non-native, and when I'm face to face with a human being that's yelling at me about how native plants trumps everything else, I try to engage in the conversation. What do you eat that is native? And it usually boils down to pretty much nothing. Maybe twice a year they might eat something that's native, and it's very small and trivial and one-off, and not like a staple in their diet. And it's like, well, so someone's got to grow the food that you eat that is not native. And so it's like, of course, most of those people, their diet is dominantly, wheat, and which isn't. I believe wheat is from Egypt, isn't it? I think wheat is from Egypt. I like to use the example of the apple, which is from Kazakhstan, and I think I choose to grow food in a way that is beneficial to many, and now there can be more land out there that doesn't have to grow food to feed me, and it can return to natives. And in fact, I'm going to go so far as to say, like, my particular form of horticulture for gardening, for growing my own food, is I am going to attempt to get the things that I eat to become effectively invasive in my garden, so that way they don't need as much care from me. And and that's a whole other topic. But the thing is that I think that the native plant advocacy is heartbreaking, really. I think I love the idea that people are loving plants, loving horticulture, loving gardening. That is terrific. But it is usually a thin veneer over hating other plants to the point that they're spraying herbicides. That's where I cringe, and it's like I don't think that's good for the environment. And and that's what we're talking about, is what's good for the environment. All right. Any other thoughts about native plants? I feel like it's a difficult, dark topic.
Well,
go ahead. Go ahead, Derek.
Just like with many of these discussions, there's a lot of nuance to it, right? Corn was grown throughout the Americas, and was a staple, right? But corn today, through the Corn Belt in the Central Plains, is not the same and not used the same anymore. So it's a bit of a challenge, right? You can argue it's a native plant, developed in Mexico and refined in Peru, and potatoes as well. The 8,000 varieties in Peru is just incredible. But so it's that, plants that are native to your area are going to be well suited. And so if they fit the what you're trying to do in your environment, fabulous. That's not going, and I have a preference for growing native plants. That is not going to stop me from planting apples.
I think corn is an interesting one because without human intervention, corn cannot exist. And so I think that the longest corn will survive is 2 years, and then it's completely gone. So even if it is native to an area in a way, like, the Aztecs, then I kind of feel like, is it really native there, or is it a completely bred and manufactured food? In which case, because if you just leave it and you do nothing for 2 years, it's completely gone. It doesn't seem like somehow it seems like that's going to make it so it's no longer native. I don't know. But sure, it was there 200 years ago, therefore it counts.
Right.
And it's like, okay. Which kind of makes me think that the way that we classify native versus non-native is broken as well. So, all right, I'm going to go on to the next one.
Oh, wait, I had a thing. Unless you want to move on.
No.
I'm okay to move on if we need to move on.
Do it. What's your thing?
Paul, you were leading into a thing I was about to say that you've said in the past that I think I remember Toby Hemingway talking about too in Guy's Garden of native to when, right?
Yeah. Native
to when? Is this native to 1550, native to 1647, native to 1820, right? The, different time cascades for different plants coming to North America, right? And the idea of, if someone wants to really rewind it, well, then we should all leave too, right? If they really want to rewind it that far, right? Like that's one part of the conversation. The whole thing of this is a front for selling herbicides to nonprofits so that they can buy product that other people can no longer be convinced to buy. That's another part of it. The idea that, yeah, sure, I eat potatoes and sweet potatoes, but like basically nothing else that I eat is any more a native plant, right? Certainly, like you mentioned with corn, it's so heavily domesticated. It's like the turkeys that'll drown in the rain, right? It's no longer a wild native thing any more than, some other heavily domesticated product is. And that's another part of the native plant conversation. And I think, to me, the exciting part is there's room for both, right? There's room for a garden that has no poison in it, that's growing food, that is both has native foods, has non-native foods, and has native support species, if we want to put it in a human-centric way, non-native support species, right? All these different kinds of plants, native and non-native, can feed us, can feed our buddies in the soil, can feed our buddies flying around, pollinating the plants. Like, all of this is possible if we detach the the virtue signaling of native plant supporter from all the other topics that it's pretending to be in support of, but really isn't.
I agree. I mean, I feel like the whole thing about concerns about the enthusiasm for native plants. If I remember correctly, like when I first wrote the article, 12 years ago or something, if I remember correctly, there's like 7 different big points to make about it. But and really the core of it is the enthusiasm for native plants. That thing in your head, was it paid for by bad guys? And now you're thinking like you've got the solution for environmental stuff at home, but really you don't. And the idea in your head was paid for by bad guys, so you'll end up buying herbicides. And it's like that. I think that's number one right there. And to be so adamant about it, and like that's the way. And it's like if I try to talk to somebody about rocket mass heaters and they do this, and their whole point is like, hey, shut the fuck up. Hey, shut the fuck up. Do you plant only native plants?
Right.
Have you gotten rid of everything that's not native? Like, I don't want to hear about rocket mass heaters until I can confirm that you are obedient to the native plant philosophy.
Exactly.
And it's
deployed as a conversation stopper, right?
Wow. I remember I was at the Missoula Public Library like 15 years ago presenting on something. I can't remember what it was. I think it was sepulture's techniques. And a woman came into the back of the room, and there was 35 people there. And she stopped the presentation, and she needed to know that we were advocating for native plants over anything else. And I kind of started to talk about it. And she just started to argue with me, and then she finally left. And it was like, but she felt so passionate about it. She needed to make sure that that's what we were talking about, even though it wasn't exactly the topic we were talking about. But she was so passionate. And it's like, and I've run into this passion so many times Mm-hmm. I appreciate the passion, but I wish it was redirected. And the thing that's the saddest of all is that I think that passion was paid for by Monsanto.
Yeah. Hijacked, if you will.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like there's so much stuff where it's like this just goes on and on and on, and people are told what to think by their politicians or their favorite politicians or whatever, and now they're locked in, and this is a fact. And anybody who says anything to the contrary, obviously they're part of the evil political party, and that's their whole thing. And it's like, oh man, how are we going to solve these problems if we can't get past, the stuff that's been paid for by bad guys?
Right.
Yeah, and the native plant, I think, is just another distraction, just like the light bulbs. Like, it's trivial. When specifically did a plant come here? How is that its value in your garden, its value in the nature you're creating in your permaculture system? Like dandelion, plantain, those are huge medicinal plants, and they're great. And the fact that they came here at a different time than the sunchokes and the nettles, it's just a trivial concern to get people all crazy.
How about the ponderosa pine tree? I mean, that's my number one weed, and it's allelopathic, and the Native Americans worked their asses off weeding it out. They would start forest fires on purpose to get rid of that shit, and it ruins our food systems. Mm-hmm. And so, how many farm fields have you been through where they've got a bunch of native ponderosa pine growing in the middle of their operation? Probably none. It's hard to run the combine over that ponderosa pine. And so, which is another big thing is like a lot of the plants that are on the naughty list, the noxious weeds list. It has to do with the fact that it's like it screws up my combine. Yeah. Therefore, I don't like it. So, and I drove combine for many years when I was a young fella. All right, I'm ready to go to the next one. Okay, this is the one. This is the one where people are going to hate me the most. And it's like there's a bunch of wonky math on this one, and I think that one of the things is that there was a movie years ago, and I watched the whole movie so I could understand it. I think it's called Cowspiracy, and he was saying 51% of all of the carbon dioxide that we're suffering from for climate change issues is coming from cattle. And I want to reduce it down to cow farts because that's the funniest part. But, cow farts, cow burps, cow whatever, but it's cattle for the sake of beef or dairy. And so, the answer is veganism. Well, it turns out that the guy that made the movie said 51%, but the number that he was trying to quote actually said 15%. And, but if you're going to be passionate about this, 51% sure sounds a lot better. And then the other thing is that I think that they've got some really good points when they're looking at those CAFOs, where they're feeding the cattle food that they're not designed to eat, that they're going to get sick. And I imagine farty.
Yeah, and like anything, you can do it wrong. Right? Right. There's lots of ways to do something wrong. It doesn't mean cows are bad any more than humans are bad, because sometimes we live in a bad way. Right? Humans are an amazingly beneficial species, and cows can be too.
So, I think that when you do, as Alan Savory suggests, or Joel Salatin suggests, or Greg Judy suggests, or I think there's probably about 100,000 ranchers out there that are doing paddock shift systems. Mm-hmm. And when I have done paddock shift myself, I see that the growies inside of the paddock are 5 times bigger than the growies outside of the paddock that are getting ignored.
Yeah.
And that's like, so there is carbon sequestration happening there, as well as life in general. There's massive improvement to the soil, to the paddock. And I have a hard time dismissing that under the banner of cow farts. And it's kind of like, so basically Alan Savory's work says that if we're going to solve climate change, we can all become vegans, but we'll still need to have animals doing paddock shift systems in order to be able to solve climate change. His math says that a lot more work in the world of paddock shift systems will 100% solve all of climate change. And frankly, my one-on-one observation supports that. Now, trying to address climate change is tough because it's invisible. It's, not only is there carbon dioxide, but there's a bunch of other gases too that cause it. And it's all invisible. It's not like wherever you drive, then a bunch of these little brown cubes pile up inside of your car and you got to sweep it out. Like, wow, I drove to the store and now there's 20 more pounds of these little cubes. Whew, this is annoying. We got to do something about this. Instead, it's completely invisible. And so it's like, it's a bit challenging to talk about and to measure and stuff like that. And of course, I think that what is going to work better is going to be rocket mass heaters. And rocket mass heaters solve a whole bunch of environmental problems. And, but I believe, and then much like the light bulbs, I think veganism has been a terrific health benefit to a lot of people. They just switch over to veganism and their health is amazingly good. One could wish to explore that if you drop the standard American diet and go with something that's organic and stuff, that could have been a part of it. And of course, veganism does include Diet Coke and Oreos, which kind of makes me squeamish. But I want to, if people are going to bring up veganism as the solution, which when they bring it up, it's the only solution that's allowed to be discussed. Nothing else is allowed. I would like to at least say gardening. I think that, first of all, switching to a vegan diet and just being vegan, it does have an impact. It's I believe, something on the order of, just making that switch, something on the order of 4 to 5 tons per year of impact. So you cut your food-based carbon footprint in half by going with a vegan diet. And that is admirable. To travel a path that gives up ice cream and cheese and pizza and all kinds of yummy things, my hat is off. That is, and to do it for the sake of yourself as well as the greater environment for everybody, well done, well played. I would like to say that growing a garden is better. And being vegan and getting your food from your own garden, better still. And so I think that is the thing to explore. And yet, I don't know, there's a lot of negative pushback on that. It's veganism or nothing. So, it's one where it is a partial solution, and I admire the people that do it. And, but I think that part of the problem also comes with the people that are excited about it tend to point at people that are not vegan and demand that they be vegan, even if because there's some people that go to veganism and they get really sick. And it's like, I'd rather that they got really healthy, so they need to find their own healthy thing. And I don't know. I don't think there's anything that's as powerful as veganism where people are being so angry that they're demanding that other people have to obey. That's been my impression. But I've also met a lot of vegans that are totally cool if nobody else does it. And it's like, that's terrific.
I think we're much more powerful at saving the world when we ourselves are healthy. So if your healthiest path is a vegan path, then I think that is a great path forward. And if your healthiest path is to grow your own animals in your backyard and garden, then that's your path. But to me, it's more about how healthy can you be and how much can you contribute to the world rather than like try to be less and take less and do less and don't hurt things. I mean, I just think that's a lie. I think we're here to be beneficial. And if we're healthy and bright and amazing and feel great, we're going to do great things. And we're going to live a long time and be super impactful. And I think that's worth more than like, don't drive your car or, oh, I'm not going to eat a cow because it might fart.
I think one of the things with the veganism stuff, when I bring up the idea of gardening and growing your own food, I immediately get shut down because not everybody can grow their own food. And
Whitmore taught us that everybody can grow their own food.
Well, I think that what they're trying to say is some people live in an apartment, they don't have a balcony, their windows don't open, things like that.
She taught us how to live on sprouts, growing in an apartment, on balconies, indoors.
Good. And at the same time, I love where you're going with this. That is good, healthy stuff. And at the same time, I think what I'm trying to say is to say, I try to talk about growing a garden or growing your own food. And then the pushback I get is, but most people live in apartments. I don't think that that's true, but it's like, so what you're advocating is for most people to die is kind of what and it's like, I think that the thing is, like, if we're going to talk about what's the best thing for improving the environment, what's the best thing we can do ourselves for improving the environment, and we're going to talk about, I think gardening is a great topic to talk about. Growing your own food is an excellent topic to talk about. And I think that it would be good to bring it up, talk about it, and say, so if you get the opportunity to move out of the apartment, it could be worthwhile for what you can do for the environment. It's definitely points in favor of that. Now, of course, then there comes a conversation of like, well, then you have possibly a longer commute to work. And I'm kind of thinking like, yeah, let's explore that one too, which I did in my book repeatedly. So like what I want to do is to get people to live outside of the city, grow their own food, or be part of a community that grows their own food, and arrange things in such a way that you'd have no desire to drive into town. Like you have the vehicle, you can go anytime you want, but you just don't feel like it. Where you're at, you're perfectly happy. I'll just stay here. And it's like, now you are growing your own food, or you're eating food that's grown right here instead of having it, packed all over the world to get to you. All right. Veganism. I appreciate so much of what they're doing, and I wish that they could come up with a health plan that doesn't include Oreos and Diet Coke. And at the same time, gardening. I hope to grow your own, the grow your own food thing catches on more than veganism, or that vegans would appreciate or admire or wish for growing their own food.
This podcast is continued in part 2.
In a world on the brink of social collapse, one website stands above the rest to fight back the zombie horde of corporate trolls. Permies.com. Take back control of your destiny and protect your loved ones from the toxic gick coming at you from all directions. Strap on your overalls and start building that bunker of abundance with the good vibes and friendly, helpful insight found at Permies.com.